Hey, everybody, this is Wake Up Call Live. I'm your host, Christina Previte, and joining me today, our special guests, FemSquire veterans, I will add as well, or maybe alumni, maybe that's a better word. Joining me today is Jeralyn Lawrence and Diana Schimmel. I don't know that they actually need any introduction, at least in our circles, right? But maybe for other people, some new friends, if they don't know who you are. Jeralyn is a matrimonial law attorney. Your office is in Warren, New Jersey, correct?
Watchung,
New Jersey. Okay, we want to make sure we get that right. And
next town over.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's in the general vicinity. I'm not sure that it actually matters anymore, you guys, because
I
of
agree.
Zoom. But you are trained as a collaborative lawyer, divorce mediator, and arbitrator. And Diana, you are breaking out of New Jersey a little bit. You're barred in New Jersey, but also Pennsylvania, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you are the partner at Martine, Katz, Scanlon, and Schimmel.
That's right. We also do matrimonial law, and I'm just a glutton for punishment. I do it in 2 states.
Yeah, and you actually do divorce, but you also do adoption. And I've spoken to you in the past about surrogacy matters. You handle those as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, family building and family dissolution.
Awesome. I like that. But first and foremost, you are women attorneys, and you've been doing this for more than a minute. I don't want to out anybody, but Diana, 10 plus years?
Yeah, plus.
And what about you, Jeralyn?
I think mid-20s at this point.
Oh my God. Well, for me, I think it's going on 17 years. I can't believe I've been doing anything at all for 17 years. It makes me sound old, but I prefer to say seasoned.
Seasoned.
Yes. Yeah. And so this is the Roundtable series where I get incredible women like you guys to come on and talk about our experiences, largely practicing law, being female attorneys in the world, being you guys are moms, so you're juggling a lot, you're running businesses, you're doing a lot. And today I really want to talk about women in law and where have we been, where are we going, what do we still have to do? And the reason this is important to me is something that comes up a lot is, do we still need feminism? Not that I want this to become a big conversation about feminism, but I think the consensus is that there was a time when feminism really had a purpose. And I think sometimes the newer generations feel like because we've made such incredible strides as women in business and, doing things we've never done before, that there's almost like no need for it anymore. And so I kind of want to start out there. What do you guys think? What comes to your head when I say that?
I think it's a really interesting point. I don't agree. We still need feminism. We still need it. I mean, the pandemic is a classic example. The women who had to leave the workforce when juggling work and childcare when things were shut down, the number is just astronomical. And those women who didn't have the support that they needed, whether it was, from a partner or from childcare in any way, shape, or form. And it was women who really took the hit. They were the ones who were looked at to leave the workforce, and some of them not able to return. I was extremely lucky that I had a great partner to help out, and we were able to juggle everything. But those first several months, we all really had to scramble. And I was at that time caring for an 11-month-old. So I think we still do need feminism because there wasn't really necessarily a rule of thumb, so to speak, on what was supposed to happen and who was supposed to take over. And we all talked about how long we've been doing this. I still face, hurdles and sexism and all of that. So I don't think there will ever be a time where we need to say, feminism is done. We can lay down the mantle.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. And I don't think because you've come a long way, you forget where you've come from. I still hear stories in the early days, women were not allowed to wear pants to court. I can't imagine wearing anything but pants to court. When I did an internship at the U.S. Attorney's Office back in law school, you had to wear a skirt in federal court. I don't even know if that's still true, but so we still need to advocate for women just in case they still have to wear skirts in federal court. But really, I mean, certainly we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. And I think the pandemic did highlight that. I think there's been a lot of silver linings though in the with regard to the pandemic, and I think employers and employees have learned a better way to do things. And I hope a lot of us keep at least a hybrid with virtual Zoom or Microsoft Teams or phone or whatever it is. I know I've had the best year of my life, work-wise and family. I mean, I am depressed in a way. I'm fighting depression coming out of this pandemic because I do not want to go back to what my life was. I don't want to do it. I have been home almost every night with my kids. And so I don't want to dismiss the suffering and the terror that we've all felt in the past 13 months, but we've learned a lot, and I hope we hold on to that. And I think while, just like Diana said, women have left the workforce because I think they were forced to choose between schooling their children and working. We've learned a whole new way to practice. And Christina, you and John really are innovators in that. And I think, when you and I first talked probably a year ago, you're like, you know what, I'm getting rid of my office. We're going virtual. And I was like, wow. I mean, that, so you invented that, and then you brought the pandemic along for all of us. But, you've taught us that there's a different way to practice. So hopefully that helps balance out some of what Diana's talking about women leaving the workforce.
It's so funny you say that about the skirt situation, Jeralyn. So when I was in law school, we had these like mock interviews with our career center, and one aspect of that sort of prep was they were supposed to coach us on clothing, and they were adamant that I could wear nothing other than a black or a navy skirt suit and a blue or a white button up, but that I had to be conscious of the buttons and make sure that they weren't going to spread because of my chest so that no one could see in. And they made us like ensure that those were going to be the only outfit types that we wore for interviews. And I don't know if this is just our area of law, family law, or the modernness in me, but I always wear dresses and I always wear a funky blazer over it. You can see I'm wearing something. I wear some kind of jewelry, some kind of something, some fancy shoe. That just makes me feel better. So, and I have never had an issue with that, but if somebody had told me what I needed to wear, I would have been affronted by that. And quite frankly, I've had male employers say something to me, and it was very jarring to, have somebody comment about my clothes in the workplace.
What did they say?
I was wearing a very conservative, like a boat neck shift dress. So it was not form fitting. It was not cleavage bearing. I was wearing opaque tights and an ankle boot. And I was told that I looked like I could be on the corner soliciting.
I think you told me that story before.
Yeah. And I was a really young attorney at the time, 25 years old, like my first position. And I was like so stunned and taken aback. And I think I told you that story because it was actually the only time I felt like I wanted to cry in the office, and I just didn't know what to say or do. And it actually came from the managing partner, who was a man, his wife, who was the office manager in the firm.
Wow. That's interesting. And it wasn't really that long ago. So I think that's really where this feminism discussion for me comes up, is when you still have people saying things like that. And you do. I mean, I know that was a little while ago, but these things are happening all the time. I mean, look at the Harvey Weinstein thing that just happened recently. I mean, it's not just the entertainment industry that those things are happening. That might have been a really extreme example, but there's things like that in every industry that women deal with.
That was 11 years ago, but 5 years ago, I had a male attorney. I was engaged at the time, and we were talking about that my wedding was coming up, and he said, "Oh, I assume you're not returning to work after your wedding." So that was 5 years ago. And he was dead serious. And I said, well, why? I was so puzzled. I didn't understand the question, to be perfectly frank, but he just assumed I would be getting married and that would be it.
Well, you know what else brought this up for me too, was when RBG died. Because it was almost like our fierce warrior who was paving this path for all of us. She was gone. And it was like, no, we need you. We still need you. Don't go. And she was such an incredible woman. I mean, she was doing all these things way, way, way ahead of her time. And I do still think, well, yes, things were different when she was just starting out. But then I wonder, but really how much? Because I think we can sometimes, when we have all these laws in place about sexual harassment and how to behave in the workplace, and there's much more emphasis on that, especially in corporate America, where you actually have to engage in training how to behave appropriately in the workplace. But just because it's sort of hidden away doesn't mean that those things aren't still happening. And it doesn't mean that those attitudes and the thought process that gave rise to them in the first place aren't still there. So I guess I'm just wondering what's your instinctive reaction to that, and if, to the extent that you feel comfortable, if you could give some examples where you see where we do need work to do, we still have work to do, and maybe places where you think we're doing a great job.
I definitely think we still need work to do. I mean, I'll use the State Bar as an example. Amy Shamala tells me that she was the first woman in the boardroom. That's her recollection. She was the only woman among a sea of men. And when I look at the board of trustees right now, there are more women than men. So, I think when you know better, you do better. And I think as more women are entering the workforce, when I was at Norris McLaughlin, for example, they were great in treating women, but it was a culture change because almost every male there had a stay-at-home working wife. So they didn't quite understand the challenges that women had or that I had. And, I had to get home to my kids, and they were great about it, but it was eye-opening. And I think our colleagues in the law, when they know better, they do better. And that's all that you can continue to do, is just try to educate them that you're going to be the hardest working, and that we can have it all and that we can manage it. There's going to be times we're pulling our hair out or, tears streaming down our face that they'll never see, because sometimes it's minute to minute. But when they know that you're their equal and you're a partner and maybe even better than them, I think that's where they start to respect you, and a change happens. I don't know, Diana, if you agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we're fighting against an inherent bias. I think that, a lot of men can say that they're quote unquote woke and, it doesn't matter if, it's a woman or a man next to me working shoulder to shoulder. But I think there really is somewhat of a bias. And I think there's also some men who are threatened by strong women in the workplace. I've had an experience like that, but I've also had the opposite, which is women supporting women in the workplace and having really supportive men in the same token. So I think we probably haven't experienced what RBG experienced, which was, being one of a handful of women in a law school class. I certainly was, a 50-50 mix when I was in school, but I think that there's still these remnants, these old shackles that sort of remain that we're still throwing off. And I think the best thing that I've done to approach it, not only to go off of what Jeralyn was saying, which you're educating and explaining, but also to just by example, be a certain way to show them that the biases aren't true. I think that leads to some of us working double time to prove that. But I think it's just consistent and repeated positive action and the way that we carry ourselves and the examples that we set. And also, Christina, you and I have talked about this too, setting the example for the next generation. Each one of our generations is going to build off the next. So, we're forming that fourth generation since RBG. So hopefully, by that point, they'll have made even further a step forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was just going to go there. Do you think that eventually our society will just evolve? Because you are both great role models for your kids, not just your daughters, but the boys too, because they're also seeing this. They're seeing how women's roles are changing, and they're not going to have a lot to compare it to. Right? They're not going to be thinking about what it was like when Jeralyn started practicing law. They just know what they see now. So do you think at some point it'll just sort of become extinct, that mindset of, propelling women forward in the workplace.
Maybe it will. I think one of the big catalysts for that is that we no longer see as much the one income household. We are now a 2-income household society, more so than ever before. I think, when I was growing up, the one income household and one parent staying at home, whether it was mom or dad, was definitely the norm. And now everyone I know, both parents work. So I think that's going to be one of the things that shifts and changes. But I hope it continues. And I don't necessarily know if that's only because of feminism. It could be because of, our society at large and materialism and capitalism and all the other stuff that's fun to talk about. But it's a positive benefit, I think, for females, because there's more of an expectation that there's two parents, two partners in a household working and earning.
I agree. I think your word's a perfect one, Christina. I think eventually it will become extinct, and it is not only because of what our daughters are seeing, but so much so because of what our sons are seeing. Mm-hmm. Diana uses the word bias, and it probably is some bias there. I'd probably use clueless. I just think that guys are just really clueless, and they're just not. It's just a whole new world for them too. I don't think they come at it with ill intent. I think they're only expressing what they learned and what they knew, and now they're learning a whole new world. And so it's just a matter of educating them and outworking them and showing them, that we can do it all. Mm-hmm. Maybe not all the same day, but sometimes same day. But
yeah.
Did you guys ever read that book, Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg?
Yeah.
She says somewhere in the book that this idea of having it all, she's like, maybe you can't really have it all. You can have most of it, and everything won't be perfect. Like maybe you're going to have dirty dishes in the sink. Maybe you're just not going to make your bed every day. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to sacrifice a career and children. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Because that's another thing that comes up a lot is, how can you really invest all of yourself into your business and growing your business? Because we know they're babies, right? We all know from having our own businesses that they're a lot of work and they require attention to really be thriving. But so do kids, right? So do relationships, marriages. There's all these things that are going on. And if they require 100% of you, how can you ever really be fully investing in all of them simultaneously?
Yeah, I think she had a good point, but I think that there's a couple of different pieces to that. Is what does having it all mean to everybody? Like for me, I don't need to be the 50s housewife. Like that's not important to me that my rug is vacuumed and my dishes are done. Like I have different goals for what having it all means. But I think there comes a time when we have to realize that we really are setting ourselves up to fail. I think, Jeralyn, you just said it. We can have it all, but not at the same time. And we can do different things at different times. And I think I was, at least for me, I was pushing so hard to do everything because I felt like I had to overly prove myself as a woman in my, male dominated field, that it almost got to a breaking point. And similarly to what Jeralyn said as well, I didn't know how much I needed a break from that until the pandemic hit. And then I was able to scale back. And that's when I really feel like I got it all. But it also I wasn't allowed, I don't think, to take a step back until everyone collectively was as well, because I knew I wanted to take a step back. I knew I wanted to work less. I knew I wanted to spend more time with my child, but I didn't know how to do it. And I wasn't able to say something and have it be normalized until the pandemic hit and people, got it and everyone was in the same boat. And it took everybody being in that position to change something.
I think the adage is true. It takes a village. And you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And you need to surround yourself with a very strong team in every aspect. And you really cannot have a weak link. You need, you need a strong team at work. You need a strong team at home. Because to do it by yourself, it would be maddening. And so, and women, we are really good multitaskers. We're getting good at delegating, but even when we delegate, I know when I delegate to my husband, it's definitely not going to get done the way I want it. It's probably really going to stink, quite frankly, but it's done. And so I need to let go that it's not going to be done the way I wanted it, but the kids are alive, and so that's a plus. But so we have to work on that, I think, to delegate and understand that, a B is okay, maybe even a B minus, because when we do things, we want everything to be A, and it's just got to kind of let go a little bit.
Yeah, why are we like that? That's one of the hardest things that I've had to learn in business. I've had my firm since 2014, and that was one of the hardest things to do. It still is sometimes, is to just accept that when I delegate something, it's probably not going to get done the way I would do it, but it's going to get done, and it probably will get done just fine. It just might not be exactly the way that I would have done it. And I still have a hard time with that. But it doesn't seem that men do. Maybe they got the right idea.
There's only so much time in the day, and you can't manufacture more.
Yeah.
So you have to be very protective of your time and what you say yes to and what you can handle, and then figure out who you can get to help you. And, just like trying to get a legal brief out the door. Yeah, you can rewrite it. There just comes a point in time where you're like, you know what, it's good enough. And it's a filed brief is better than, not filed brief. So, it's a hard balance, but I think we're doing it every day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Steve Fairley at the Rainmaker Institute. He teaches marketing for lawyers. Well, actually, he passed recently. Great guy. I wanted to interview him for my podcast, and he said yes, but unfortunately we didn't get to do it. And I have so much respect for him. But one of the things that he always said is done is better than perfect. It's like, especially in the context of marketing, you get lawyers that want to write these perfect blogs and, whatever we do, we want perfection. We're high achievers. And he's like, you just got to knock it off. You have to get it done. Done is better than perfect. And I'm wondering how many places in our lives we could actually apply that.
Probably a lot. I had a teacher back in the day who used to say practice makes permanent, not practice makes perfect. And I always thought that was interesting. It sort of hammers home the idea that you can try to do something over and over and over again, and it's not necessarily the right thing. So he was sort of trying to take away the myth that perfect was the achievable standard. I just personally think you're asking where it came from. I think that we had to fight so much harder for our position, when we opened our firms or, establishing our reputations. I felt like I had to fight for that. So I felt like being perfect was going to set me above and set me apart. And I felt like men maybe didn't have to fight for it in that regard because they already had somewhat of a leg up. That's just how I felt. But I realized it's an unsustainable pace, and you need, like Jeralyn said, a village, a good, reliable staff. And to understand that nobody's perfect. I think also in our field, unfortunately, clients expect that. So sometimes we get into this catch-22. But if we stay strong and say, look, we know we just need to get it done, service them in the best way possible, B minus work is fine, and go from there.
Yeah. Well, Jeralyn, you said something at the start of this conversation that I want to go back to, is how you've had an incredible experience with the changes because of the pandemic. And I believe that too. I have too, largely with the way that we've changed our business. And I always wanted to have a remote practice, but the rest of the world was the problem. But now everyone else is on board with it because we were all forced to do it. And we're going to continue that. And I wanted to ask both of you, how has your practice changed, and what are you going to keep in place? And if anything, what are you looking forward to going back to?
So I miss, you certainly miss some of the social aspects of, seeing everybody, but, you could do that on your own time. I don't necessarily need to go back to court so I can see everyone in court, but I love Zoom. If I can keep everything on Zoom, I would keep everything on Zoom. I think trials could be a little hard, certainly when you have voluminous exhibits, but mediations, early settlement panels, case management conferences, uncontested divorces, motions, all of it can stay on Zoom. And I think the benefit to us as practitioners is immeasurable. To not have to rush from court to court, to not have to pack that litigation bag, find that parking spot, schlep to court, wait with 10 other lawyers. Now we're getting a 9 o'clock call, a 10:30 call, and judges are hitting the mark. And so I think from that perspective, life has been great. Meetings. A lot of organizations we have meetings that really could just be an email, and that's annoying. And so now if you're just dialing up when my kids I'm on Zoom or whatever, and I'm home with my kids, I haven't schlepped to wherever it is that I'm going. Yeah, and I don't have to drive back. I'm home with my kids. So I think that quality of life is wonderful. So I'm a huge proponent of it. I'm going to be president of the American Academy of the New Jersey chapter this year. Everything is staying on Zoom, but for our installation but for we're going to have an in-person in October and our Christmas party. Other than that, I think even in the state bar, our section participation is up because of virtual appearances. The Board of Trustees, I think, is going to move a little bit more to in-person. They feel it's important to meet in person. Hopefully we can do some hybrid too. So I hope to keep as much as people will allow. Sometimes clients call, and this was pre-vaccine, and said, we want to come in. And I was saying, no, I don't have whatever. And I don't have a vaccinated staff. But people, I think, are adopting too. Diana, are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think we were sort of trending towards a remote office beforehand. So we didn't really have to do much when things shut down. We use Leap as our firm management program, and they're phenomenal. Obviously there's kinks with everything, but that makes it possible to go anywhere. We already had, WebEx and Zoom and all that stuff. So we really didn't have a lot to transition to, and it made it super easy. And me specifically, I practice in 2 jurisdictions. So we have 3 offices, Princeton, Cherry Hill, and Philly. And I was going between all of them. So now I can have a hearing in Philly in the morning and one in Mercer County and Princeton in the afternoon, and I haven't left my house. So I love that aspect of it. I'm able to serve more clients in that way. And also, like you said, not schlep around, the anxiety of finding that parking space and, doing what I need to do to actually physically get there. But I think it's also making the courts more efficient. You mentioned this, Jeralyn. Instead of having us all at a cattle call at 9 a.m. with 30 attorneys waiting on a list, sitting in the lobby, billing our clients, for sitting there wasting time. Now we know, okay, 10:30, I got a scheduled hearing for 1:20 the other day. So they are going to specifically call me at 1:20. I'm going to go in, get out, and be done. And I think the courts are trying to, and at least I know this is true in Philly, they have a task force specifically set up to decide what can stay remote and what cannot. And I've really enjoyed that. The one thing I do miss, and I think I'm probably one of the few who likes this part of it, is I like the show of trial, and I like walking around. I like strutting in front of the witness booth. I like that part of it. That drama is something that gives me an adrenaline boost. It's one small aspect of the rest of litigation that I'm not, if that's the one thing that doesn't come back, so be it. And I share what you're saying as well, Jeralyn, about the volume of documents and having to do that over Zoom. But otherwise, I've found it to be great. I'm happy to keep it this way. And we haven't had clients come back, even now with the CDC guidelines in New Jersey changing. And, we haven't had people ask. People just assume it's phone or Zoom. They don't ask to come into the office. And it's great. We're not opening up anytime soon.
I think the clients love it. I think it's cheaper for them. I think they don't have to worry about taking off time from work. I think they're calling in or Zooming in on a lunch break. I can't tell you how many people I've met sitting in their car.
Yeah.
They pop up, right? So so it's not just about us and our quality of life and our ability to advocate just as well, other than Diana's courtroom theatrics, which I appreciate for sure. I think it's a benefit to a client, and I think that they are seeing that this is value added to their life, and they're able to meet with us on their own time, around their kids' schedules, around perhaps their work schedule. But Christina, you knew all this way before we did. So
Yeah.
Well, I can't take full credit. I already know other people in other states that are doing that have been doing it. There's one person in particular, she's been doing it for years, long before the pandemic. So for them, it was just business as usual. And actually, I want to also give you guys credit. Maybe this is not something you've actually given yourselves credit for, but there are so many business owners in particular that became sort of crippled once the pandemic happened. And instead of thinking, well, how can we make this work? How can we just roll with this and keep our business going? Instead, they just go into a panic and they stop. And there's so much resistance around embracing the change and just figuring out what do we have to do to keep the business going, keep the client serviced. They would just sort of crumble and just wait for, well, when is this all going to be over? Those are the people I think you hear saying,
or you'd be out of business.
Yeah,
I think that's true. Yeah.
I mean, you had no choice. I mean, we learned, thank goodness for Zoom. I can't believe the timing of Zoom coming out at the time the pandemic hit. But I mean, we all learned Zoom. Same with Diana. We, leaving Norris and starting my own firm, we had all the right technology. Thank goodness, all brand new. We had Leap. Everyone had their own laptops. And so we knew we were giving lessons on how to use Zoom. I love Zoom breakout rooms. One of my associates, Ashley Edwards, I love her. I haven't seen her since March. She lives down the shore. She's like, Jerry, why am I commuting? And she is more efficient working from home because she's not doing the commute than ever. Not Dan Burton. He works from home at least one day a week. So it taught me a lot as an employer. I grew up in a big firm. FaceTime mattered. I needed to see you. I needed to be able to yell down the hall to you, hey, I need help with this, or can you? I've done better with it. I mean, I was very rigid. Now it's just a whole different model. But it was hard, but it's working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people that have gone out of business, and I wonder, it's with those people, what is it, because they really couldn't keep things afloat, or was it just because of their mindset that they were just really sitting around waiting for things to go back to the way that they've always done? I'm sure you've heard, but this is how we've always done it. I'm sure you've heard that, right? And it's for people that are forward thinking like us, it drives me crazy. Well, so what? That's how we always did it. We're not going to do it that way forever. Maybe it's not always going to work. Maybe there's a better way to do it. And people like you, I think, are seeing that there is a better way. I mean, we've cut down our costs significantly just by going remote.
Yeah.
I mean, your revenue probably is just as good, and your expenses. I mean, it's a wonderful business model.
It's great. And I really like it. I was telling you guys before we went live that, yoga pants are my friend. And I know it's not just me.
No, for sure. I think that there were things that we were interested in. Like, I used to always want to work from home on a Friday because I didn't want to commute in Friday afternoon traffic. And I had a former partner, and he was a man. It doesn't matter. I don't think this has anything to do with gender, but he came up in a big firm as well. And he just couldn't fathom being at home. But to me, I was more productive. Why would I sit in an hour and a half to 2 hours of traffic when I could have been using that to work and been home and refreshing myself and getting ready for the weekend and spending that time, finishing up the week. And I think that that's really what's carried over, now into the pandemic. And I think, and to bring this sort of back to a gender situation, I think the partners I have now are both women, and they understand that much more because they have the same balance that I do. They have young kids, they have the business that we're running together, the have it all, balancing it all model. And they understand, if I need to save that hour not commuting, it's only going to benefit everybody with my productivity.
Yeah. I'm seeing the benefits all around. I mean, other than obviously some of the hard times that people have had, aside from that, I'm definitely seeing a lot of the benefits. And I have to tell you too, a couple of years ago, before this happened, I remember saying to John, why do we really need to have this office? Why couldn't we just figure out a way to be remote? And then literally we talked about it for less than 5 minutes. And then we're just like, yeah, that would never work. And then continued on. And I look back on that like, wow, I really would have been so ahead of my time if we had just continued to have that conversation and really talk about it. And I guess this is where I said earlier to you that I was ready for it. But I think at that time, I think the expectation from other people, the public in particular, is that you have an office, that they have somewhere to go see you. But this has all been beneficial for me, and I definitely hope that it continues moving forward. I think it will. I think everything's just changed forever. It has.
I hope so.
Me too.
So is there any advice that you would give to younger women coming up in the field?
I think one of the things that really sits with me on this is just don't perpetuate the stereotypes. I think that we already give them enough ammo with this sort of bias that I think people come to the process with. So just do good work and don't give them any reason to blame, so to speak, for lack of a better word, the fact that you're a woman or a female attorney on what's happening. And I think that's a very quick, way to be an easy out for some people to say, oh, well, it's because she's a woman or she's a mom or any of that kind of stuff, or she's emotional. But just do good work and don't give them any excuse to call you out or to pin anything on something that's unjustified, like your gender, and to keep doing it. I don't want women to give up. I want women to keep pushing themselves in the fields that they want to be a part of, whether it's traditionally male dominated or not.
Yeah, similar. Reach down that ladder and physically pull women up. Just pull them up. And, the more women you can surround yourself with and promote and help them find out what their passion is, the better. And I also think a real emphasis on self-care. Make sure you're taking time for yourself. This job will eat you up. This is a tough gig that we've signed up for. I love being a lawyer. I love my degree. But it's tough in every aspect.
Yeah.
Keep, running the business, getting clients, collecting from clients, dealing with your colleagues, dealing with the court, dealing with the clients, dealing with the client. It's hard. And so when your cup is empty, you need to make sure that you're refilling your cup, however you define that, whether that's a run, a walk, a vacation in Key West, whatever it is. And don't feel guilty about doing that. I mean, I'm sure, Diana, when you wanted to work from home those Fridays in the beginning, you probably had to wrestle with yourself and had some really, unpleasant feelings with yourself. Like, oh my God, this is a tough ask. And I think the next generation is not going to feel that way. And a lot of that is, because you taking that step to do that. So I think we just gotta, we say that, climb the ladder, but we literally have to reach back and pull people up and say, do better than I did, make some more changes that I haven't even thought of.
Just keep it moving.
I agree. And also really mean it. I think a lot of firms say, oh, we love a work-life balance and, oh, we want you to take that vacation, but like really mean it when you say that as an employer. And I really can't agree more with what Jeralyn's saying about pulling up other women and supporting other women. There's too many female attorneys who I've seen, unfortunately, who go at each other, and, just supporting somebody else doesn't mean that you're knocking yourself down or that, you're hurting your own business. There's plenty of business to go around. I think that we only do ourselves harm when we act that way. And that, if we support each other, it's going to have a positive collective benefit, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, Diana, we talk about this all the time, and Jeralyn, I'm sure that I've spoken to you about it, but women's empowerment is that's my passion, and part of that is encouraging other women to support each other, whether that's telling you that your hair looks great today, or sending you a brief that you need, or sending you a friendly email, whatever it is to make you feel like you got this in the world and that you have a supportive network around you. It really makes such an incredible difference in your experience in the world. And I always say to women, when I do encounter someone who might seem a little abrasive towards me, sometimes I will actually say to them, like, can we talk about this? Because I want us to be supportive of each other. Other men they don't know what our experience is in the world. They don't really understand that. They understand what it's like to be men, but they don't understand what it's like to be women. And we do. So, let's embrace each other with that and support each other, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And very often it's those women are behaving that way because they had a negative experience with a man in the workplace and they feel as though they have to behave that way to assert themselves or to get that position back or anything. And they don't realize that they don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Or they've been taught differently. I think back, early days of law, we were taught to be gladiators. That you were a lawyer, you fought, this is what you did. And you relied on this stranger in a black robe to make these very important decisions. It's only through experience that this paradigm shift has happened. That, not for nothing, that's not a great lawyer. A great lawyer is somebody that can settle a case, figure out how to assemble a team of professionals that can help this family going through a very difficult time. And actually, it's a failure to try a case. I mean, can you imagine having a judge decide anything in your life and have peace with it? We have a lot of good judges, but that makes me break out in hives to think that I'm going to have a judge decide anything. And we do this for a living. So, I think, some of the younger women coming up believe that stereotype that we are gladiators when in fact we are not. And so I think we have to help break that.
I think it also depends who's teaching them.
For sure.
I mean, I'm not going to say any names, but where I originated in my legal career. And I was in an environment that, was the norm to be very aggressive. And I think
I shift in you from when you first started practicing?
Definitely. I mean, I think that I sort of have a natural aggressive or assertive tendency, but I definitely see the value of settling. And this is just myself gaining life experience and becoming more mature as an adult and as an attorney. It's always going to be better for parties to try to resolve whatever differences they can and resolve things amicably. Whatever that looks like. Like, I'm not saying everyone should, sitting around singing Kumbaya, right?
Totally
that's
agree.
Maybe not realistic in every case, but some of them can, some of them do, right?
Well, I think there's a misunderstanding between aggressive and advocacy. Like, you don't need to just pound the table for the sake of it. I think sometimes clients misunderstand that. And the way I always describe it is, do you want control over what this decision looks like? Do you want a judge to tell you where your daughter's going to preschool? No, like, you want to make that decision yourself. And I think once people understand that distinction between advocacy and aggression, then they get it.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfectly stated. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think at the end of the day, what everybody wants, all of us, whether it's the litigants, ourselves in our personal lives, we just want to be heard. Just want to feel like somebody is listening to what we're saying and it matters. And that's what they think their day in court is going to be.
Oof.
No, that's not what happens.
Sorely mistaken. Yeah.
Well, I tell people you're more likely to feel heard and actually be heard at mediation. If you've got a talented mediator, I've mediated with you, Jeralyn, you're very good at it. You let people, say what they need to say. Whether it's relevant or not, we know sometimes they feel the need to sort of vent a little bit. But if they need to get that out so that they can now move forward and address the real issues to get their divorce done, then why should they not do that? And we know they're not going to do that in court.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, preaching to the choir. Thank you so much, ladies, for giving me your time and sharing your stories with me. I really appreciate it. Would love to do it again because this is not a topic that gets old for me. And
thank you for having us.
Of course.
I would love to do it again.
I would love to have you both on. Diana, didn't we do one about self-care?
We did.
previously?
We did with Melissa Ruvlo. And I think she actually was in Key West, Jeralyn, funnily enough, that you gave that as the example. But yeah, she was very smart. No, I love to be invited to these conversations because, Christina, I think you're doing a really, really nice job of getting these topics out there, and people can listen to them at their leisure, whether it's live or later on the re-recordings, and then they feel not so alone. We got so many comments from the self-care episode. I think, I hope we get some from this. And I agree with you. This topic, I could talk about it all day, every day.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm so glad that people are getting some benefit out of it. And Jeralyn, we'll have you on again. Maybe we should just do another one on self-care.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, kids. Well,
can we do it from Key West, though?
Yeah, we should. Let's plan it. It's business expense. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you have any input, please feel free to email me, or you can stalk Jeralyn and Diana on the internet. I'll put links to their websites in the comments, and give us your feedback. If there's a topic that you'd love to hear us talk about, let us know. We'll plan it.
Great.
And everybody enjoy your day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good to see you guys. Bye. Thank you.